Until this month. Okay, can you do that how you would normally get on, and let me know if you have a question, a problem?
Would you like something bigger than this?
Hi.
Okay, I believe we're ready to start.
Okay, good afternoon. This is the review session of the New York City Planning Commission of Monday, December 16th, 2019. The time is 1:01 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 7. Yakyang Yang is our presenter. Turn it.
Thank you. Hi. FWRA LLC is seeking a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendments to implement a comprehensive plan to redevelop approximately 29 acres of underutilized and environmentally challenged waterfront area in the downtown Flushing neighborhood of Queens CD7. This application is submitted by a consortium of 3 developers that has come together to submit these proposed actions as one LLC. United Group and FNT Group are local developers who have several developments in the Flushing area and throughout Queens. The YNG is an oversight development group with a team based in New York. Located in Flushing, Queens, the project area is 2 blocks west from the heart of downtown Flushing and is between Flushing Creek and College Point Boulevard. 2 blocks east is Main Street, the main thoroughfare and transportation hub of the downtown, where the 7 terminates at Main Street and Roosevelt Avenue. Across the creek is Willets Point, and just 2 miles west is LaGuardia Airport. The proposed actions of this application are rooted in 2 decades of planning efforts in downtown Flushing and stems from the collaborative efforts between public and private entities. In 1993, the Downtown Flushing Plan was created with the goal of creating a comprehensive plan that would improve transportation, expand the range of community facilities, provide waterfront public access, and expand commercial, retail, and residential uses. The 1993 Downtown Flushing Plan was implemented in 1998 through both the rezoning of downtown Flushing and through the creation of Downtown Flushing Waterfront Access Plan. The WAP sought to establish visual and physical access to Flushing Creek and to attract the public and activate the waterfront. Subsequently, in 2004, the Downtown Flushing Development Framework was established. The framework was a joint EDC and DCP community-based initiative that resulted in a land use planning strategy for the future growth and sustainability of downtown Flushing, the Flushing Creek waterfront, and the Willets Point Peninsula. The 2004 framework identified additional issues related to the area's development, quality, and zoning that the 1998 zoning and WAP did not address. Both the 1998 and 2004 efforts were broad ideas and lacked movement from the development market. In 2010, the not-for-profit Flushing Willets Point Corona Local Development Corporation, the LDC, received a $1.5 million grant under the New York State Brownfields Opportunity Area Program to produce the BOA nomination study, the BOA study. This was a concerted effort and targeted way to strategize on the redevelopment of these vacant and underutilized properties so close to downtown Flushing. In 2014, the LDC partnered with DCP to prepare report documents for the BOA study and to create a master plan known as the Flushing Waterfront Revitalization Plan, the BOA Master Plan. The master plan's vision statement sought to create opportunities for revitalization. The recommendations intended to facilitate new mixed-use buildings, creation of new public walkways and open spaces along the waterfront, and extension of pedestrian and vehicular circulation systems from the downtown to the waterfront. In 2017, the final draft report of the BOA report and its master plan was completed, and in 2018, it received official BOA designation. The proposed application was submitted to serve as a mechanism to accomplish the goals of the BOA Master Plan, recommending the zoning map and text amendments, including the creation of a special district. The project area, bound in red, is approximately 29 acres, generally bound by 40th Road to the south, College Point Boulevard to the east, extension of 26th Avenue westward towards Flushing Creek, and Flushing Creek to the west. The surrounding area is characterized by a diverse mix of residential, commercial, manufacturing, industrial land uses, and building types. The section of Flushing Creek just north of the project area is lined by industrial uses, including concrete and asphalt plants. Generally, industrial uses are located north and west of the project area, and commercial, residential, and mixed-use areas are to the south and east, an area that includes downtown Flushing. Main Street, 2 blocks east of the project area, is a central commercial corridor that is heavily retail and pedestrian-oriented, containing many multi-story retail buildings with large floor plates split among multi-retail tenants, as well as some office buildings and institutional uses. Roosevelt Avenue is a main east-west corridor that also hosts retail and office uses with large floor plates, particularly between Main Street and Union Street. West of Main Street, Prince Street is heavily trafficked secondary corridor, an area of similar commercial and retail storefronts, as well as mixed-use buildings. A C42 district covers mainly downtown Flushing. The C42 that covers the west area of Main Street allows a max residential floor area of 2.43, maximum commercial floor FAR of 3.4, and maximum community facility FAR of 4.8. A M31 district covers a portion of the project area as a legacy of previous industrial uses. The project area would not affect any current manufacturing jobs. Developments are taking full advantage of the full FAR allowance to create a full mixed-use 12 to 17-story buildings containing retail on the ground floor, professional offices and community facilities, which include medical offices on the second and third floors, and residential units above. The image on the top, outlined in red, is a 14-story development called 1 Fulton Square, located between Prince Street and College Point Boulevard. Built in 2014, it is one of the mixed-use buildings featuring hotel use as one of its multiple mixed-use components. Further west of Prince Street and adjacent to the project area are multiple large block-size mixed-use developments featuring residential use. The bottom left photo, outlined in blue, is the construction of Tangram, a 16-story, 4-building, 1.2 million square feet mixed residential commercial development to be completed in 2020. Located within the project area on the bottom right photo, outlined in green, is of Skyview Park, a mixed-use development with more than 1 million square feet of floor area comprising of residential and commercial uses. The development has 5 17-story residential towers atop a commercial shopping podium. It was completed in 2 phases. The first 2 residential towers were completed in 2011, and just recently, 3 glass facade residential towers called the Grand at Skyview, facing the waterfront, was completed in 2016. It was listed as New York City's 5 best-selling residential projects in 2018, and price for units are averaged at $1,000 to $1,200 per square feet. In total, these 3 developments, including approximately 1,700 units and 1.2 million commercial square footage. Robust mixed-use developments that include retail, office, hotel, residential, and commercial uses are advancing westward from downtown Flushing over the past decade. As identified in the BOA report, the project area has several limitations that prevent well-planned and well-coordinated outcomes. As previously stated, the project area is subject to the earliest WAP plan created over 20 years ago. These maps show the existing WAP and street framework on the waterfront sites within the project area. The WAP requires a 20-foot wide short public walkway along the waterfront, half the citywide requirement. Visual corridors and upland connections do not support public circulation throughout the waterfront area, and the existing sidewalks are too narrow for pedestrian circulation. This sketch illustrates the potential waterfront design under current zoning. At 20-foot wide, the current waterfront requirements are too narrow and is not enough to create a meaningful open space for the public. Developments within the project area must also follow the special regulations applying around major airports. All of the sites within the project area are constrained by how high they can go by the airport height set by the FAA. The 150 feet above mean sea level means buildings cannot build much higher than 13 stories, including the building's bulkhead. If the buildings were to go higher than zoning allows, they would have to seek a special permit waiver from the BSA. The special permit requires consultation from the FAA. Both the previous mentioned mixed use developments, Tangram and Skyview Park, were able to build to its height through this BSA waiver. Because of its close proximity to LaGuardia, we still see mid-rise developments at heights of 15 to 17 stories in this part of Flushing. The project area has also varying topography elevation as shown on the contour map, as one site sits lower than the other, and the area slopes down from College Point Boulevard to the water. The project area is also constrained from the water's edge with DC jurisdictional boundaries and wetland areas. The DC jurisdiction limits the amount of impervious areas in the development area and affects the waterfront walkway design. Properties would not be able to develop on identified wetlands, and all buildings must be designed for resiliency to allow for people to get close to the water's edge while also protecting critical infrastructure building during storm event. As mentioned about the topography, some sites are lower than others in the project area. The shore public walkway would have to be elevated to avoid flood tiding and would have to be designed at a 14-foot design flood elevation. All of these constraints were analyzed and its impacts noted in the BOA study. Diverse and meaningful public engagement were organized for 2 years with city planning leading the community events. Stakeholders included residents, business owners, property owners, local community groups, elected officials, and agency representatives. The proposal of the Special Flushing Waterfront District follows the recommendations of the BOA Master Plan and is intended to facilitate the revitalization and coordinated redevelopment of former brownfields and vacant sites with new mixed-use development intended to transform the project area so they contribute to the growth of Flushing. This included the expansion of new public walkways and open space along the Flushing waterfront, establishing physical and visual public access connections to and along Flushing Creek, and coordinating an internal circulation of a private street network allowing walkable size blocks to improve the functionality of the special district. The project area bound in yellow in this slide consists of 2 waterfront blocks, blocks 4963 and block 5066. There are 4 development sites located on block 4963. Development Site 1 on lots 7, 8, and 9 contains approximately 165,000 square feet of lot area. It is currently vacant and used for construction staging activities. Previously, the site contained a single-story warehouse building. Development Site 2 on lot 65 contains approximately 138,000 square feet of lot area and is also vacant. Previously, it was a single-story Asian Whole Foods supermarket facility. This site has recently pulled their permits to start cleanup work as required by the BOA. Development Site 3 on lot 85 contains approximately 175,000 square feet of lot area and is improved as a parking lot and temporary construction staging area. Historically, it used to be a woodworking facility and later a petroleum facility. Development Site 4 on lot 212 and 249 contains approximately 47,000 square feet of lot area and is vacant land. The most recent previous use was a scrapyard and prior a concrete plant. The development sites that are currently vacant are primed for development once the special district application has completed its ULIP journey. Lot 75 and Lot 200 are potential sites that are analyzed in the project area but not development sites. Lot 75 contains approximately 30,000 square feet of lot area and is improved the 1-story building material storage building. Previously, it was an auto sales business. Lot 200 contains approximately 120,000 square feet of lot area and contains U-Haul's 4-story T-shaped shipping and storage facility. Prior to being U-Haul, it was a furniture and zipper manufacturing company. The U-Haul site contains a clock tower cupola visually prominent along the waterfront. The 2 other outparcels within the project area include Lot 1, which contains below-grade Con Ed infrastructure, approximately 1,200 square feet of lot area, and Lot 210, which contains approximately 6,900 square feet of lot area and is currently a vacant 1-story auto repair shop. On block 5066, lots 7503 and 7507 contains a previously noted Skyview Park development. A short public walkway was completed this year and is developed along the development's waterfront using the existing WAP regulations. The total lot area of the project area combined is approximately 1.5 million square feet. The applicant, FWRA LLC, seeks to propose a zoning map action and text amendment actions to implement the recommendations laid out by the BOA Master Plan. The existing C42 district would be mainly retained, with the northern portion of the special district changing from the existing C42 and M31 districts to an M12 R71 district. The proposed mixed-use district would allow existing light industrial uses to remain and expand while allowing redevelopment with residential and commercial uses. Commercial FAR in the proposed M12 is 3.0. The rezoning would have followed the bulk and WAP provisions of the special district. In addition, the rezoning would bring the existing storage facility site into conformance. The special district includes 3 subdistricts with a focus on subdistrict A and subdistrict B. Subdistrict A would be subject to a zoning map amendment change. The change in zoning from C42 and C31 district to a mixed-use residential M12 R71 would increase new housing potential and would require this subdistrict to establish an MIH area in this location. Development Site 4, as well as the U-Haul facility, is located in Subdistrict A. Subdistrict B would be retaining the C42 zoning, and there are no changes to its bulk requirements. The max allowable FAR would stay at 4.8. This subdistrict is subject to the private street network, which allows for breaking up of the massing of the developments on large blocks to create walkable blocks, avoiding massive blank wall developments. The subdistrict contains development sites 1, 2, and 3. The previously discussed Skyview Park is identified and included as part of Subdistrict C. Minimal changes are made in this subdistrict for proposed special district regulations, reducing parking requirements. The special district modifies underlying zoning regulations related to height, setback, use, and parking to allow the greater flexibility in the type and shape of future developments. The existing WAP will be replaced by improved provisions to increase the amount of open space provided by new waterfront developments. The recommended requirements would increase the minimum width of the shore public walkway from 20 feet to the citywide 40 feet standard, establish modified requirements for 4 upland connections and 3 visual corridor locations. The upland connections would be located at the 39th Avenue, 38th Avenue, and 37th Avenue extensions. Additionally, a flexible zone will be established from 36th Road extension to the 36th Avenue extension, allowing the required upland connection to be located within this zone. Visual corridors are required all along Roosevelt Avenue, at the 39th Avenue extension, at midway through Lot 200, at the 36th Road extension. Aligning with upland connections, a private street network would be established. Going from east to west, both 39th Avenue and 37th Avenue would be extended from College Point Boulevard. 38th Avenue would be a newly established private street, extending from College Point Boulevard to the creek. Janet Place would be extended northerly to terminate at the U-Haul site, and a new private street would bisect development sites 1 and 2 from Roosevelt Avenue and continue at a northeasterly direction to the proposed new 38th Avenue. The private street network would improve pedestrian and vehicular circulation by providing new opportunities of movement between developments and provide additional areas of active ground floor frontages in the form of commercial, community facility, and residential lobby space, and would contribute to an active waterfront. All private streets would be 34 feet wide, curb to curb, with 13-foot sidewalks on each side for a total of 60 feet. The special district would allow for the phasing of this private street network to allow for the site to be constructed independently. The proposed actions would establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area within only the Subdistrict A portion of the special district. This is the only portion of the special district that is getting a rezoning from a commercial and manufacturing district into a mixed-use residential district. A range of 51 to 61 affordable units are proposed for Development Site 4. Under the city's MIH program, a share of new housing is required to be permanently affordable when land use actions create significant new housing potential. The MIH program consists of 2 main options, option 1 and 2, and at this time, both MIH options are being proposed. The option will be finalized through the ULURP process. In addition, the special district text addresses new height and setback requirements. Subdistrict A would be permitted to reach a maximum height of 200 feet, and Subdistrict B would be permitted to reach a maximum height of 245 feet pursuant to a CPC chairperson cert that would be created as part of the special district. The chair cert would require written verifications from both the FAA and Port Authority that conclude that such proposed development would not pose a hazard to air navigation. Upon receipt of such verification, a letter to DOB would be issued by the chair. The special district retains the existing C42 bulk with modifications to height and setback adjusted to provide for the private street and upland connections. Primary and secondary street frontages are designated with each street frontage having a specific base height and setback requirements. In addition, flexible articulations of either recess or projection along the street walls are required to ensure meaningful breakup of the building's facade. Throughout the district, there will be a general overall reduction of parking requirements. Residential and community facility uses in Subdistrict A, MIH area will be subject to 50% of units, and commercial uses in Subdistrict B and C will be subject to 1 parking space to 1,000 square feet provision versus a 1 space to 300 square feet. Since the completion of the BOA report, City Planning has been working closely with the developers of the waterfront sites to facilitate the recommendation of the report. Approval of the proposed action would create the development of sites 1, 2, 3, and 4 in subdistricts A and B of the special district. The modification to the bulk requirements of the special district and private street network would allow the development sites in subdistrict B to be split into 2 development pads, breaking potential massive structures that could create blank street walls. Together, development sites would produce approximately 3 million square footage of development. In Subdistrict B, where the C42 zoning is retained, a total of approximately 1.35 million square feet of residential use with 1,450 market rate units are being proposed. In Subdistrict A, where a new mixed-use residential zoning is being proposed, a total of 243 units are being proposed with a range of 51 to 61 units specific to affordable housing. Commercial uses would include office, retail, and hotel use, approximately 1.4 million square feet in built area, including 1,800 hotel rooms. Approximately 22,000 square feet of community facility space, and 1,500 parking spaces in total. 137,000 square feet of open space is proposed together on the 4 development sites. As a potential site, if U-Haul were to enlarge, they would be required to provide a short public walkway. The special district would then have in total, 160,000 square feet of open space. Development Site 1 is owned by the United Group, a local developer with projects in Flushing and throughout Queens. The mixed-use proposal will be developed with 4 residential towers on top of commercial podiums, with approximately 500,000 square feet of commercial use, which include office, retail, and hotel use. The hotel portion would have approximately 365 keys. The proposal also includes approximately 458,000 residential square footage with 546 market rate units and 5,000 square feet of community facility use. Approximately 510 parking spaces would be provided across the commercial podiums. And approximately 43,000 square feet would be dedicated to enhancing the waterfront, including short public walkway, new trees, sidewalks, benches, and playground. This schematic proposal illustrates the proposed ground floor plan of Site 1. Pink indicates retail, which encompasses almost the entirety of the ground floor, with residential and hotel lobby entrances shared throughout the space, shown in light blue and light brown. Development Site 2 is owned by Y&G, an overseas development group with this development team based in New York. The mixed-use proposal would be developed with 2 residential towers on the west of the private street and 1 hotel tower east of the private street with a maximum height of 239 feet. Approximately 400,000 square feet of commercial use would include retail and hotel use. The hotel portion would have approximately 877 keys. The proposal also includes approximately 400,000 residential square footage with 399 market rate units and 13,500 square feet of community facility use. Approximately 300 below-grade parking spaces would be provided. 35,000 square feet of open space would be provided within the shore public walkway. The rendering on the right shows a 2,000 square feet open space plaza. This particular development designed a shared private street where no curbs would differentiate between plaza and circulation into both east and west buildings. This slide illustrates the ground floor of the YNG site. The hotel tower is shown on the right with the open plaza out front, adjacent to the private street, and the residential towers are located on the left. Blue indicates retail, and red indicates the residential lobby entrances. The dark orange indicates special programming for commercial uses. Now, this site slopes down to the waterfront, so even though the ground floor was on the previous slide, you would walk down on a slope to the waterfront with different program of the building. Retail is lined along the waterfront to activate the open space. The proposed development Site 3 is owned by F&T Group, a Flushing-based development group who have several large developments in downtown Flushing area, including Tangram, a previously mentioned development site. Site 3 would be developed with 3 towers. A prominent curved residential tower would be located at the waterfront, shown on the right rendering. Below the curve in the base, the program would hold hotel use, shown on the right and on the left. Another residential tower and commercial tower will be located east of the private street, which you can see on the right rendering towards the back. The towers would have a maximum height of 239 feet. Approximately 478,000 square feet of commercial use, including office, retail, and hotel use. The hotel portion would have approximately 544 hotel rooms. The proposal also includes approximately 490,000 residential square feet with 507 market rate units and 1,600 square feet of community facility use. Approximately 539 below-grade parking spaces would be provided. Development Site 3 would provide approximately 42,000 square feet of open space within the shore public walkway. This schematic proposal illustrates the proposed ground floor site plan of Site 3. The purple indicates hotel use on the western portion of the site, and the orange indicates commercial retail on the eastern portion of the site. The blue indicates office use and is illustrated as the office lobby that would rise as a standalone office tower. The residential lobbies are located on both the eastern and western portion of the site. This site is one of 2 developments that are proposing banquet-like ballroom facility within their program. Proposed development Site 4 is also developed by the previous group, F&T Group. Proposed Site 4, located closest to the northern boundary of the project area, would be developed with 2 towers on a single podium with a maximum height of 200 feet. This mixed-use proposal would be mainly residential use and contain approximately 17,000 square feet of retail commercial use, approximately 230,000 square feet of residential use, with a total of 243 dwelling units in a range of 51 to 61 affordable dwelling units are proposed to be provided, along with 2,400 square feet of community facility use. Development Site 4 would contain approximately 166 below-grade parking spaces. Development Site 4 would provide also approximately 15,000 square feet of public accessible open space, including the shore public walkway. The rendering on the left shows a shore public walkway looking north. The ground floor indicates commercial use in pink, residential lobbies in yellow, and community facilities uses in dark purple. Access to the waterfront from the retail frontage is proposed. An Upland Connection would be located in this flex zone. These plans are an accumulation of years of engagement between city planning, the developers, and the community. This long-time work guiding developments to the waterfront. As you saw earlier in the area, a number of development sites have prepared their property for development and are eager to begin ULURP process. The proposed actions of the application seek to bring together the goals of the BOA Master Plan of creating new public walkways and open space along the Flushing waterfront, establishing physical and visual public access connections to and along Flushing Creek, coordinating internal circulation via private street network to improve functionality through walkable blocks. Thank you.
I want to make a few comments before tossing it over, open for questions. One is just the first slide that Hae-Kyung showed us of the 20-year history. This department has been involved with the waterfront over that period of time. The second observation I would make is just how far our waterfront public access requirements have come. Skyview, which is a very large development built under the current zoning, meets those requirements, but to our current, it doesn't meet the current requirements, and our current sensibilities would view it as too stinting, not sufficiently wide, a very, very long pedestrian street wall. The next thing I would note is just the scale of the development. It is not something that we frequently see. The scale of the development that has already occurred and the fact that this is 3 million square feet. And I have to give a special shout out to the Queen's Office, who worked with these different development partners, all of whom are eager to move forward, to come up with a comprehensive approach to this site that sits cheek by jowl next to the vibrancy of downtown Flushing. And so with that, I'll toss it open for questions or comments from the Commission. Commissioner Burney.
Thanks. Long presentation. Thank you. I had a couple of questions. One is about the roads, and I'm just confused about which are private and which are public. And I think on slide 23, you had a...
So the highlighted in yellow are private streets, and the not yellow are public streets.
So why are they not all public streets?
So a part of the special district would be retaining the C42, and the private street allows for the FAR to be moved around, and the bulk would be retained.
So if you made the private streets public, they would lose the development rights for that area, and they wouldn't get all the bulk that they wanted.
Yep. All the
The other thing that I'll note is that we worked extensively with DOT on this. We do view one of the advantages of being able to work with all of the landowners at the same time is being able to establish a rational street system on what is currently one huge, huge mass of land.
Thank you, Marissa, and I just want to add a couple other points. This really has been an interagency collaboration, and it goes all the way back when we were developing these ideas as part of the Flushing West neighborhood study here. So we had a lot of interagency engagement throughout that and carried forward through the BOA planning process. The idea of these streets, as Hae-Kyung said, is really to bring pedestrian and vehicular access to and through the sites. But it also is going to allow the developers to create below-grade parking. The other idea is to make all the parking as limited as possible on the streets and in the network itself. We really wanted to make sure this feels like it's for pedestrians first and foremost.
But public streets can be for pedestrians also. I mean,
they can, but
privatize the street to make them accessible to pedestrians.
But in developing these sites, the developers are basically excavating bathtubs. The parking is actually underneath the streets in order to create an efficient layout on what already constrained streets. The idea was to create the opportunity for this to be all done below grade. The real lesson that we were also trying to show that we were learning is from the Skyview Park development itself, where all of the parking is above grade. It's part of that massive podium that really thwarts pedestrian flow in and around and through that site.
I mean, one of the reasons I'm not a fan of private streets is that it raises issues about maintenance and security and who has the right to the street and so on, which may be okay today, but you don't know what happens tomorrow. And I think it's just in general something we should do with extreme caution. But
I'll note that the issue of private streets is one that we consider quite frequently, and actually it is raised in many a Staten Island development. And there the concern is, will a homeowners association be able to have the wherewithal to maintain the streets? Given the scale of the development, given the fact that the parking for these large retail and residential buildings will be located there, we did not share those concerns, and again, worked with DOT on this, because this is the opportunity to avoid what happens just to the south at Skyview, where, as John said, you have a large raised parking podium, but you also have a street wall that, but for curb cuts, extends all the way from the eastbound all the way down.
Solid wall.
And it actually is a challenging walk. When you look down that street wall, we're quite pleased that we're going to have 2 streets that will provide a break in the street wall.
And I just want to add that we definitely took some convincing on our own part to come around to this, and I want to assure that there will be oversight to make sure that the feel of these streets is indeed feeling public. Each of these sites will need a waterfront certification to demonstrate not only the fact that they're providing the required waterfront, but as you can see, many of these streets are actually upland connections and visual corridors. So we will actually be endeavoring to scrutinize those plans very carefully.
So that begs the other question. Who actually is responsible for maintaining the 40-foot waterfront and the adjacent open space?
All the private owners, just like they are for all the other waterfront developments pursuant to our zoning.
And there's some sort of enforcement mechanism that...
There will be documents recorded against the properties. We'll also consult with the Department of Parks and Recreation. They'll want to make sure that the materials and everything could be maintained should there be some issue of improper maintenance by the owners.
Okay. And the only other question I had was about the building heights. I mean, there's a current limit of 175 feet, and we're saying, well, you can go to 245. What is the likelihood of the FAA approving that? Because I assume they have good reasons for the 175 feet.
They do, but again, during our Flushing West process, we actually brought representatives to the FAA to a number of our community board meetings. They came all the way from Texas to hear and share their process, to explain it. And the one thing they said is that they definitely believe that they can be flexible up to a certain point, and that's how we develop these numbers. They feel like this is still something that should get some oversight. So these developers will still have to, as they proceed, get sign off from both the Port Authority and the FAA on their actual heights. But they engaged with us and said generally these higher numbers seem where they could be comfortable.
Thank you.
The one other thing I'll note with respect to your questions about the waterfront access is that is because our waterfront access requirements are quite detailed, they're stringent. When there is a development on the waterfront, it tends to get a level of heightened review, of site plan specific review. And so that is how they will continue living with us over the course of development. Commissioner Ortiz.
You know, it struck me actually this weekend I was visiting Washington, D.C., and I went to the Wharf, which is a 27-acre site on the waterfront on the Potomac, which seems very similar in terms of the objectives and goals. And when you think about streets, there are private streets there, and they function as mixed streets, as pedestrian/automobile, streets. You almost can't tell whose street it is, which works very well in that environment. And I imagine that the flexibility offered to a private developer enables that kind of creative use of space. So, I would say that, there are pros and cons to having private streets versus public streets.
Interesting. Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes, Commissioner Burney and John, the questions I had or the concerns I had, you answered a few of them. One of the questions I do have still is with regards to this restrictive deck, looking at the language where it says in addition to reserve account with sufficient funds for the maintenance of capital repair of the constructed public accessible private streets shall be maintained at all times. Who's going to which agency is going to make sure that's enforced? How do you monitor something like that?
The mechanisms here, we believe, will be executed, and that they will be a combination of the Department of Buildings, first and foremost, and obviously DOT, or most of these elements are complaint-driven, as most of our maintenance issues are today. We have that on a number of our waterfront public access areas already, where between the elected officials and other neighbors, they're telling us something isn't being done properly. So. And then we work with DOB and the other agencies, parks in some cases, or in this case, probably DOT.
And my last question is with regards to, I guess you also worked with DEP, with the owners who could do the private roads going to be bringing in whatever sewer lines or storm lines they need?
Correct. They will bring in the network of infrastructure to connect to the network that exists in the public streets.
Commissioner Delahoo's.
Do you mind going back to the slide that shows all the square footage from all the different sites and the number of units that are, yeah, that one. So, obviously looking at those number of residential units and that number of affordable units is challenging for me, and I think, quite honestly, for the city as a whole. I'm just wondering, do we know whether or not the developers plan to use any tax abatements for the other portion? Besides the MIH unit, are we expecting to generate any affordability from those other units as a result of them taking tax abatements? It would be helpful to know that when it comes back.
Exactly. We don't know that now, but we will get that information for when it comes back.
Commissioner Capelli.
Are there any wetlands on this site?
Yeah, we can show them on the DEC. They're hard to see because they're just, most of the green is wetland adjacent.
It's in the
But-
line. It's right here.
Yeah, it's mainly on development site 3 at the southern end. There's a small area shown in brown there that's actual wetland.
Has DEC signed off on this? Have they looked at
There's been a lot of consultation with DEC, just to first and foremost, confirm the areas of their jurisdiction, and then obviously the sensitivity around the wetland issue.
Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, I have 3 unrelated questions, if that's not too many. One is about streetscapes, one's about consultation with the community, and one's about the large number of hotel rooms here. Maybe we'll take community consultation first. This is, I guess it's a sign that I've been here long enough that it sort of rang a bell with the Flushing West plan, and John, you referred to this. This obviously has some similarities. That one had some issues that had been raised locally about it. When the pencils were put down here in 2016, those had to do with, I think, infrastructure, et cetera, and who knows, it probably had to do with a whole lot of other stuff. How much, you've referred to a lot of community consultation. How much of that has been post-2016, and how much of it has addressed the things that were of concern when Flushing West work slowed down?
Yeah.
In other words, has the community consultation continued right up to this point?
It has. There were requirements under the BOA study to continue community engagement, and it has generated a lot of feedback, particularly at the community board level, which hosted a couple of our public events. And in particular, I think one of the things that they felt really pleased about, that the department took some ownership, is separately we got grant funding to study ways to improve the ecology of Flushing Creek itself. That was one of the major elements of resistance when we were doing some of the Flushing West studies. People said the quality, the smell in particular, at low tide in the summer on the creek was quite strong. A lot of sulfur exposed in the tidal flats. Some of that's very natural, but it still made people think twice about the advisability of growing downtown towards this resource. But we are in the process of creating a Flushing Creek plan that's going to develop strategies. And we're also really pleased that the Army Corps has recently announced they're expanding their own scope of work, which is going to be south of Roosevelt Avenue, to actually do tidal wetland improvements on the west side of Flushing Creek, directly opposite these development sites.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Marin. Oh, no, that's right, you had 3. One down.
Well,
Go on. No, go on.
On the street, as we were talking about the private road network, I'm curious to know if there are any, I didn't see in the proposed text any requirements about transparency or active uses. I know this is an area where there have been, is referred to in Skyview, some large slabby facades at street level. Are we making the best along these private streets with these pretty intimidatingly scaled buildings. Are how do we know that the street level experience is going to be as good as possible?
So within the text, which is sort of new, in that we are going to place requirements for articulations within the base height and within the tower portion. So as you're walking parallel to the street or on the street, the base would be projecting in and out, so that you would actually have that difference as you're walking the street. We placed that in the text.
But might those be blank walls? Is there any requirement that they be?
We haven't increased the transparency requirements. We can take a look and have discussions with the urban design folks who've been working on this. I think that the thing that you saw with a lot of the floor plans is they will have active retail on the ground floor, so we certainly do expect that there will be a lot of exposure of those retail uses to the sidewalks.
Yeah, okay.
But I think the question is, what is the minimum requirement?
What is the minimum requirement? So we'll have that number when we bring it back.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Good.
Review all that with them.
And then my last question is to note the very high number of proposed hotel rooms here. And I'm curious who the market for that is. Is it local Flushing commercial activity, or is it related to LaGuardia Airport, or how are we going to use up so many hotel rooms?
We've, again, really been hearing from the developers about this, and what they've explained is that, first of all, a few of them have had experience developing new hotels. There's a Hyatt in one of the projects that Hae-Kyung presented that has been among the most successful Hyatts launched across the country. The vacancy rates here are very low. It is generated largely through the proximity to LaGuardia, but they think that by offering these banquet facilities, which really don't exist yet in Flushing, it will be serving more of a local market as well for special ceremonies and events.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Commissioner Marin.
John, you mentioned low tide and sulfur. Is this any of this in a floodplain or any fear of water into the project?
So this has been part of what's informed the design of both the walkway itself and the elevations. There is a varied topography, as Hae-Kyung has said, so some of the sites where the buildings are don't need additional elevation. They're actually going to be already elevated, but we're trying to make sure that there is a resiliency strategy across the district.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ortiz.
And if you could go back to the slide where they went through the square footages of each. Yeah. I guess I'm trying to understand sort of where the commercial or retail specifically activity is intended. And we have a very vibrant, downtown Flushing is really quite vibrant. And, what's the strategy in terms of where we're making sure there's continuity for the pedestrian? Are we trying to activate the waterfront with retail uses? I guess I don't see the overall retail strategy here. And I think given some of the questions around pedestrian comfort and connectivity, that we should, when it comes back, that they communicate sort of what their vision is and what section of the site plan are they in fact trying to activate and why. Because the waterfront is such an asset, and you'd imagine that's where they want it to go, but then we're also trying to balance connectivity to downtown. So I'd like to know that they're giving that some thought.
Absolutely, and I will say just generally, what we've seen is that most of the ways the streets are being extended from downtown Flushing is one of the locations where they imagine a lot of retail. So the 37th Avenue extension at the northern end and the 39th Avenue extension at the southern end are generally viewed as being aligned with a lot of those retail.
Yeah, well, because as we look at that, as I look at 39th Avenue, is it safe to say that there's a block between where the letter A is, where there would be no retail on the ground floor? Or no, am I just misreading that?
Well, where the A itself is one of our potential sites. So right now it wouldn't have that, but if it were to be redeveloped, it could certainly orient the retail onto 37th.
Okay. I think it's a really important question, and I'd like them to come back to us with their strategy for that.
Yeah, I think a diagram showing that strategy would be better.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Cirillo.
I just have perhaps a follow-up question on the sort of the private street issue, which obviously, as the chair indicated, we have a lot of familiarity with, and that's not always a positive thing. And I understand that the scale of this project may eliminate some of the concerns that smaller developments often are challenged with respect to maintenance of private streets. But can you go back to that the famous slide we've been? That's it. So I just want to understand what we're actually seeing. So off College Point Boulevard, the first section of street that you would be on would be private, and then you transition into a city street? Is that what's happening? Are those?
No.
Or that's just the street?
Then it's pedestrian.
And then it's pedestrian only? Is that what's happening?
Correct. There would be at the southern and 39th Avenues public for one block to the west of College Point Boulevard, and that first section of Janet Place is also a public street.
I wasn't sure. I see it now. So let me ask you this: since shared streets are a new concept and are being tested, we'll say, because they aren't necessarily a typical part of our environment yet, what experience is being drawn from that makes this a comfortable scenario for this size development? It's particularly since there are parking garages, as you indicate, so it's not just that vehicles might enter and exit through the same space as pedestrian, but clearly the road will be used for vehicles accessing parking and other purposes.
That's correct, but we really do think that, first of all, one last thing on the maintenance is that just bear in mind that these streets are the roofs of their accessory parking garages. So they will always want to make sure that all the infrastructure, all the elements that are in the street are functioning well, so that the stuff that they've programmed below, including in this particular site, there's a passageway that connects the hotel to the banquet that through a lot of discussions we agreed could happen under the street.
Sure.
And I think what's really fascinating is this site in the center has actually decided to create, Hey Kyung was showing. So this is actually their below grade, below the street.
Got it.
So you can kind of see what is already happening in terms of how the parking is more efficiently laid out across that span below the street, as well as some of the functions that have to now serve both of the elements above grade.
Yeah, I guess I just have there's sort of an inherent concern about this, because I know, and again, the scale of this may be very different with respect to the financial wherewithal to ensure that this kind of an operation actually works all the time, and you don't get caught up in smaller homeowner association battles, which is more common in a sort of less dense scenario. But I guess it's just, you said this was interagency, so I'm assuming all the agencies, including the public safety agencies, everyone is comfortable with this setup.
Correct. There's also a lot of conversation with FD&Y.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I will note that the department shares the starting assumption that you have, but again, even a 60-unit homeowners association versus 3 million square feet is, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, no, I absolutely recognize that.
Yes, Commissioner Rumpershad.
Sorry, one last question. I didn't see it in the renderings or the illustrations, but has the idea of a bike path been incorporated along the waterfront?
I think that the challenge is there have been so many that what we've discussed with the DOT planners has been some element of bike access through the site, but it hasn't really been incorporated on the waterfront, right?
It hasn't been identified. It has not been identified, no.
But that actually would be helpful when it comes back to address the bicycle access.
Exactly. We'll continue those discussions with DOT and their bike unit.
Commissioner Capelli.
Isn't there public transportation to these sites?
Yes.
As Hae Kyung showed, it's 2 blocks to the east at Main Street in Roosevelt. We are hopeful, again, one of the ideas when we were discussing Flushing West, and we're continuing now with the city's capital strategy around key stations, the Roosevelt Terminal Station at Main Street has been identified, and there is a design underway to possibly extend a new entry in the location closer to this site.
Other comments? Okay, then this very significant private application is certified.
All right, the second item on our agenda, page 89, is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Queens Community District 4, and our presenter is Kathy Coe.
Good afternoon, Commission. The applicant is, Tuckman Associates LLC, and the location of the proposal is at 11040 and 11038 Saltell Avenue in Corona, Queens, Community District 4. And the actions requested are a zoning map amendment from an R6B district to an R6, and a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area. Just for some background, the project area was mapped R6 under the 1961 zoning resolution and was rezoned to its current district under the 1989 Elmhurst Corona rezoning. The project area is in North Central Queens, Community District 4, and the project area is located in the neighborhood of Corona, which is east of Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, and just west of Flushing Meadows Corona Park. Public transportation in the area is largely served by local buses, and the closest subway station is just under a mile north of the project area at Roosevelt Avenue and 111th Street. The proposed rezoning area consists of block 1972, lots 27 and 28, which is located at the intersection of Saltell Avenue and Corona Avenue, both of which are wide streets, and is directly across from Flushing Meadows Corona Park, the largest park in Queens. The dotted black line indicates the proposed rezoning boundaries, and the red line indicates the project or the proposed development site, which consists only of lot 28. And the project area was rezoned to its current district under the 1989 Elmhurst Corona rezoning, which intended to establish zoning that was consistent with the built form of the neighborhood at the time, and encourage preservation of the area's low-scale character, and identified locations where greater density could be located. And the area has a mix of residential, commercial, and community facility uses. Residential development patterns are primarily 2 to 3 story residences, and the subject block is developed with the 6-story Rego Park Health Center, which is also owned by the applicant. The project area totals approximately 11,289 square feet, and the development site, which includes only lot 28, has frontage on Saltell Avenue and Corona Avenue, again, both of which are wide streets. Lot 27, which is the southern portion of the project area, is currently developed with a 2-story, 2-family residential building, and the owner has no plans to redevelop the site. And lot 28, which is the development site outlined in red, consists of a 2-story, 2-family residential building and a 1-story garage, and this site is owned by the applicant. And as mentioned in the earlier slide, the existing uses on the project area are shown here: a 2-story residence and 1-story garage on the development site, and a 2-story residence on the out parcel. The Rego Park Health Center is located mid-block on the subject block, again owned by the applicant, and the 6-story Madison York Assisted Living Facility is located on the subject block as well. And the proposed development would contain a dialysis center to fill its community facility space. That's to complement the applicant-owned Rego Park Health Center. The first site photo here on the slide shows a view of the project area south at the intersection of Saltell Avenue, which is 80 feet wide, and Corona Avenue, which is 100 feet wide. The second photo shows the development site facing east from Saltell Avenue, and the third photo here shows the development site facing southwest from Corona Avenue, and here's where you can see the 1-story garage in white. The applicant proposes 2 actions. The first is a proposed rezoning of block 1972, lots 27 and 28, from an R6B district to an R6 district, and the existing R6 district line would be extended westward to the center line of Saltell Avenue. And in conjunction with the rezoning, The applicant proposes to establish within the proposed R6 district an MIH area with options 1 and 2, and the MIH district would be coterminous with the rezoning boundary. The AMI for this portion of Corona is approximately 46,000, which is just under the AMI for Community District 4, which is roughly 47,000. The proposed rezoning and establishment of the MIH area would facilitate the development of a new 6-story building at a height of 62 feet, covering Lot 28, with primary frontages on Saltall Avenue and Corona Avenue. The applicant proposes a total of approximately 30,848 square feet at 3.63 FAR, and there would be approximately 28,548 square feet of residential space and approximately 9,181 square feet of community facility space. There'd be approximately 25 new dwelling units, of which 6 to 8 would be made permanently affordable, and 13 parking spaces located on the ground floor. The site plan on this left shows that the cellar level would contain the proposed dialysis center, and to the right, the ground floor plan proposes a residential lobby, offices for the dialysis center, and 13 residential parking spaces to be accessed by an existing 12-foot curb cut on Corona Avenue. Floors 2 to 6 would contain approximately 28,548 square feet of residential space with recreation space on the roof of the second floor. And this slide shows an elevation of the building from Corona Avenue, and here you can see pedestrian access to both the residential portion of the building and the dialysis center, as well as the garage door leading to the ground floor parking spaces. And this elevation shows the facade of the building on Saltall Avenue, with stairway entrances leading to either the dialysis center or the residential uses. And that concludes the presentation, and happy to take any questions.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Burney.
I just have a quick comment about the architecture of it. I mean, I'm generally pretty much a fan of boring buildings, but I think this goes a bit too far in that regard. And I'm a little curious, all the windows are the same and seem to be very small for what one normally would expect these days. And then they're subdivided down to tiny panes, which, hark back to the days of blown glass, which we don't need to do anymore. And the horizontal bands, I don't think help either. So I don't know whether the architect could be encouraged to take a fresh look at the...
Sure, I'll be sure to raise this with the architect and they can respond to it when this comes back. Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Okay, then this application is certified.
Thank you.
The third item on the agenda, page 100, is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments and special permit in Brooklyn Community District 7. Amy Jin is our presenter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by 312 Coney Island Avenue, LLC, for a zoning map amendment to rezone a portion of a block from a C82 district to an R8A C24 district, zoning text amendments to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area and to modify setback requirements within the Special Ocean Parkway District, and a special permit to waive required residential accessory parking spaces. These actions will facilitate a 13-story mixed-use, faith-based development with ground floor retail, a church, a school, and a total of 278 residential units, approximately 70 of which would be designated permanently affordable. The project area is located in the Windsor Terrace neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 7. The project area is located on the southwest corner of Park Circle. The project area is an irregularly shaped parcel with frontage on Ocean Parkway, Park Circle, Coney Island Avenue, and Caton Place. The surrounding area is map C82 to the south, R8B to the north, and R7A to the west. C82 is a commercial district that permits commercial and community facility uses. New residential is not permitted as of right. The maximum FAR for commercial use is 2, and the maximum FAR for community facility is 4.8. Buildings are subject to a sky exposure plane with a maximum base height of 60 feet or 4 stories. R7A and R8B are contextual residential districts that permit residential and community facility uses. R7A districts In R7A districts, the maximum FAR for residential use is 4.6, and the maximum FAR for community facility use is 4. Buildings have a maximum height of 90 feet. In R8B districts, the maximum FAR for residential and community facility use is 4. Buildings have a maximum height of 75 feet. Both R7A and R8B typically require off-street parking for 50% of dwelling units. Other districts in the surrounding area include R7B and R5B. The Special Ocean Parkway District encompasses the project area and the surrounding area to the south and southwest. The Special District requires a 30-foot landscape front yard along Ocean Parkway and limits the bulk of permitted community facilities. Recent actions in the area include neighborhood-wide rezonings between 2005 and 2009 to map contextual residential districts west, southwest, and south of the project area. In August 2018, an application was approved for the adjacent lot at 57 Caton Place, rezoning the C82 district to an R7A C24 district to facilitate the construction of a new 9-story mixed-use residential commercial building. The surrounding area contains park to the east and a mix of residential, community facility, and some commercial uses to the north, west, and south. Residential buildings are characterized by single-family homes and multifamily apartment buildings up to 9 stories. Community facility uses are characterized by churches and schools of up to 5 stories. Immediately northeast of the project area is Park Circle, a 490-foot wide traffic circle with an approximately 220-foot wide landscaped island. Prospect Park Parade Ground and Prospect Park are located east and northeast of the project area. Prospect Park is a New York City scenic landmark. The project area is well served by public transit with access to the F and G subway lines at Fort Hamilton Parkway Station, 1 block to the west of the project area. Additionally, the B68 bus runs north-south along Coney Island Avenue. Currently, there's a church and the school on the site. Here's a view from Park Circle of the 4-story, 50-foot tall building, which contains approximately 26,000 square feet of floor area with 36 accessory parking spaces. The International Baptist Church is working in partnership with the developers for this project, and the proposed building is designed to accommodate the needs of both the church and the school. Here are some more views along Ocean Parkway, where we can see the 30-foot wide setback. The applicant proposes to develop a 13-story mixed-use building with approximately 313,000 square feet of floor area to an FAR of 7.2, with approximately 278,000 square feet for residential use, 30,000 square feet of community facility use in portions of the cellar, first and second floors, and 5,000 square feet of ground floor commercial use. The proposed development contains approximately 278 dwelling units, of which approximately 70 will be designated permanently affordable under Option 1 of the mandatory inclusionary housing program. The community facility space will be occupied by the existing church and school, allowing them to expand and modernize their facilities. Here's another view from Ocean Parkway. In this render, I want to point out that the proposed building is to the left, and the slightly ghosted out building that you see on the right is 57 Caton Place. The applicant proposes retail along Caton Place to serve local needs and better activate the street, along with the proposed retail for 57 Caton Place. The community facility uses will have their entrance on Park Circle, which would maintain the presence of the International Baptist Church from the street level. It's anticipated that the 2 existing curb cuts on Caton Place will be consolidated into a single curb cut to a width of 9 feet to serve as an entrance to the below-grade parking that accommodates 80 parking spaces, 36 of which would be used by the church and the school, and the remaining 44 would be used as flexible parking, serving building and neighborhood residents as well as car-sharing services. A 30-foot front yard will be provided on Ocean Parkway pursuant to the regulations of the Special Ocean Parkway District. The height of the proposed development would be 145 feet fronting Park Circle with a gradual step down to the mid-block. The middle portion of the building will rise to approximately 120 feet, while the westernmost portion of the building will rise to 100 feet. This would provide a gradual transition from the mid-block towards the intersection of 3 wide streets. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant requests a zoning map amendment to rezone a C82 district to an R8A C24 district, a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area with options 1 and 2, and to modify the special bulk regulations of the Special Ocean Parkway District, and a special permit pursuant to Section 74-533 to waive the requirements for residential accessory off-street parking. The proposed zoning map amendment would change the project area from a C82 district to an R8A C24 district. R8A is a residential district which allows a maximum FAR of 7.2 for residential use when mapped within an MIH area, a maximum base height of 105 feet, and a maximum building height of 145 feet, with a qualifying ground floor. Off-street parking is generally required for 40% of the non-income restricted housing units. C24 is a commercial overlay that permits a maximum FAR of 2 for commercial uses. The applicant seeks 2 zoning text amendments, one to Appendix F to designate the project area as a mandatory inclusionary housing area with options 1 and 2. The applicant intends to select MIH option 1. In this MIH map, it is only area 2. Area 1 is the existing MIH area for 57 Caton Place. The second zoning text amendment would modify the bulk regulations of the Special Ocean Parkway District to R8A, districts mapped on wide streets adjacent to Park Circle, allowing building street walls to rise without setback to a maximum building height. Without the modification to the bulk, the maximum base height would be 105 feet. The applicant believes the shear rise is appropriate given the presence of 3 wide streets and that it would allow bulk to be shifted away from the lower density residential districts to the west and create a stepped building height. The applicant also requests a special permit pursuant to Section 74-533 to waive the requirement for accessory residential off-street parking. Without the waiver, the project would be required to provide 83 spaces for the residential units. Together with the 36 spaces for the church and the school, the applicant states that the 119 parking spaces would be cost prohibitive and render the project infeasible. The findings for the special permit deal with the facilitation of parking availability and flexibility, as well as the development of affordable housing units under MIH. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, the application is certified.
All right. The fourth item on the agenda, page 133, is a certification of a UDAP designation and disposition of city-owned property in Brooklyn Community District 3. Making his first presentation to the commission is Jesse Hirakawa.
Hello, good morning, Commission. This is an application by the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development for a UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition for 8 vacant city-owned tax lots to facilitate the construction of 3 residential buildings with approximately 84 rental affordable units. The proposed developments are located in 2 clusters in the western part of the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood in Community District 3, Brooklyn. Broadly speaking, the project sites are in a mid-density residential neighborhood. The first cluster on the northern side is located on DeKalb Avenue between Marcy Avenue and Nostrand Avenue, which is an east-west local commercial corridor. The second cluster is located on Fulton Street between Bedford Avenue and Franklin Avenue, which is also a local commercial corridor. Significant institutions in the area include the Kosciuszko Pool, PS 256, and the Community Partnership Middle School, 1 block south of Cluster 1. And PS 3, Bedford Village School, is 1 block north of Cluster 2. All of the sites are well served by transit. As you can see on the map, they're all near subway stops and also near 2 bus routes. Now we'll take a closer look at each of the clusters. This is Cluster 1. And which is the most northern cluster, which includes sites 1 and 2, which is located on DeKalb Avenue between Nostrand and Marcy Avenue. Much of the area around these sites was contextually rezoned in 2012 as part of the Bedford-Stuyvesant North rezoning. Along DeKalb Avenue is generally zoned R6A with a C24 overlay on the east side of the intersection at Nostrand and on the southeast corner of the intersection of Marcy Avenue. Along Nostrand Avenue is generally zoned R6A with a C24, and along the east side of Marcy Avenue going north from Kosciuszko Street is zoned R7A with a C24. The area to the north of the sites is zoned R6B. Sites 1 and 2 are in the R6A district, which allows for an FAR of 3 for residential use and results in buildings with a 65-foot maximum base height and about 75 feet maximum building height with qualifying ground floor. Sites 1 and 2 front DeKalb Avenue, which is largely mixed use with 2 to 4-story row houses and walk-ups, with several 6 to 7-story apartment buildings and community facilities. Nostrand Avenue and Marcy Avenue are also largely mixed use with everything from 1-story retail to 6 to 7-story apartments, buildings, educational facilities, and parks. Development Site 1 is comprised of 4 tax lots with approximately 100 feet of frontage on DeKalb Avenue and a lot area of approximately 9,800 square feet. Development Site 2 is comprised of 3 tax lots with approximately 110 feet of frontage on DeKalb Avenue and a lot area of approximately 11,000 square feet. And as you can see on Development Site 2, to the left is a wall, and that is kind of the edge of where Krushko Pool is. The developments on these sites will both be pursuant to the existing R6A zoning. There'll be a 7-story residential building of 3 FAR, rising to a base height of 59 feet and 6 inches and setback 7 feet before rising to an overall height of 69 feet and 6 inches. Development Site 1 will contain 37 affordable units and approximately 29,000 zoning square feet. The building would also set back 8 to 15 feet to facilitate ADA ramps and landscaping for the first floor privacy. Development Site 2 will contain 44 affordable units and approximately 32,000 zoning square feet. The building will also include an approximate 900 square foot community room on the ground floor. And the building also sets back approximately 8 feet for landscaping and privacy on the first floor residential units. Both buildings will have an outdoor seating area, children's play area, and planted areas within the rear yards. Similarly, both buildings are expected to comply with Enterprise Green Communities Program, the Passive Housing Institute, and NYSERDA NCP Tier 3. This is Cluster 2, which is about 1 mile south of the last one, and this one includes 1 development site. Much of the area around these sites, it was contextually rezoned in 2007 as part of the Bedford-Stuyvesant South rezoning. The land uses here are generally mixed-use buildings and commercial office buildings along Fulton Street, with R6B residential zoning to the north and south of Fulton Street, and a C45D to the east of Bedford Avenue along Fulton Street. Bedford Avenue is zoned R6A C24 to the north of Fulton Street. To the south along Atlantic Avenue is largely zoned M11. The development site is within an R7D C24 district, which allows 4.2 FAR of residential use, an 85-foot maximum base height, and 105-foot maximum building height. It is coterminous with a voluntary inclusionary housing area, which allows a maximum residential FAR of 5.6 and a 115-foot maximum building height for developments complying with the inclusionary housing program and provision of a qualifying ground floor. With the C24 overlay permitting a commercial FAR of 2.0 and requires non-residential units on the ground floor when mapped over R7D. Development Site 3 is facing Fulton Street between Spencer Place and Bedford Avenue. Most of the surrounding buildings are 3 to 4-story row houses and apartment buildings, but there is also a new 10-story mixed-use building 1 block to the west, you can see on the edge. Now we're looking at Site 3, which is located on the northern side of Fulton Street between Bedford Avenue and Spencer Place. It is comprised of 1 tax lot, and it has a street frontage of 20 feet, and is approximately 93 feet deep with an area of approximately 1,700 square feet. The proposed development will be a 4-story, 4,800 square foot building with an FAR of 2.7. The building would have an approximately 4,800 square feet of residential space for 3 residential units and approximately 1,400 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The building would rise to a height of 45 feet. The site is expected to incorporate elements from the Enterprise Green Communities Program. An EIS was conducted with HPD as the lead agency. The notice of completion for the DEIS was issued on November 8th, 2019. The DEIS identifies significant adverse impacts related to shadows. Mitigation measures will be explored further between the DEIS and FEIS. This is an application by the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development for a UDAP designation, project approval and disposition for 8 vacant city-owned tax lots to facilitate the construction of 3 residential buildings with approximately 84 units of affordable rental units. And thank you.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your note about the shadow impact on the pool. I'll be very interested in hearing further about that when it comes back, because that's obvious. We hardly ever come across environmental impacts that truly are significant, and this one strikes me as fairly significant. So I'll stay tuned on that one. On slide 10, where you have the photo of development site 3. It looks like there's a for sale sign on the property immediately to the right of the site we're talking about here. Is there any chance that the applicant, not the applicant, that's HPD, but the developer may eventually acquire that site and be able to achieve a little bit more at this location?
Yeah, I can definitely have HPD speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, the application is certified.
Awesome, thank you.
The 5th item on the agenda, page 173, is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendments, special permits, and an authorization in Manhattan Community District 10. Our presenter is Allison Brown.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lenox Terrace Development Associates proposes several actions at Lenox Terrace, an existing development located in the Manhattan neighborhood of Harlem in Community District 10. The actions would facilitate the addition of 5 28-story mixed-use buildings, 1 6-story mixed-use building, and include the addition of approximately 1,600 residential units, 400 to 500 of which would be affordable. The application was first presented to this commission on August 26th and referred to Community Board 10 and the Manhattan Borough President's Office. The public hearing for this presentation will be held on Wednesday, December 18th. I'll now go through an abbreviated version of my previous presentation and address questions that arose from the commission. Do we have the slides ready?
Do you see it on the?
I can see it here.
Oh, there we go.
There we go, great. So Lenox Terrace development spans approximately 12 acres or 3 city blocks. It is bordered by Malcolm X Boulevard or Lenox Avenue to the west, West 135th Street to the north, 5th Avenue to the east, and West 132nd Street to the south. It was developed pursuant to the now expired Harlem Urban Renewal Plan, which was originally adopted by the CPC in 1952. The buildings were constructed in 1958 and include 6 16-story towers and 5 1-story commercial buildings. Originally built for middle-income housing, it holds approximately 1,700 residential rental units. The surrounding area is characterized by a mix of residential, commercial, and institutional uses with heights ranging from 1 to 18 stories. The site and surrounding area is almost entirely zoned R72, which is typical of Harlem. R72 allows for a maximum residential FAR of 3.44 or 4.0 pursuant to quality housing regulations. The development site currently holds an FAR of 2.92. Avenues in the surrounding area are mostly zoned with C14 commercial overlays, including the site itself, which allows for neighborhood-serving retail. A few R8 and R8A zoning districts are located nearby, which allow for higher residential FARs of 6.02 and 7.2 respectively. So here we see the existing conditions of the development today in plan view. There are 6 existing residential towers of 16 stories that are proposed to remain, shown in the red outline. 80% of the units in these towers, approximately 1,300 units, are subject to New York State rent stabilization and to the 2019 Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act. The Rent Guidelines Board of New York sets rates for rent increases in stabilized apartments once a year. There's no expiration or sunset of these requirements. The interior of the superblock, as you can see, is predominantly surface parking. Pedestrian and vehicular through-block connection is limited due to landscaping and chain link fencing. Also on the site are 5 existing 1-story commercial buildings which hold retail tenants such as grocery stores, banks, and food and beverage establishments, again shown in the red boxes. There are also 2 vacant lots on the site. All vacant lots and 1-story commercial buildings are proposed to be redeveloped as part of the development, the proposed development. The proposed rezoning area also contains 4 additional tax lots that are not owned by the applicant. These lots contain the Metropolitan AME Church, the New York City Parks Department Hansborough Recreation Center, and the Archdiocese of New York's Kennedy Community Center. These buildings are under different ownership and not subject to the proposed special permit. They are, however, within the area proposed to be rezoned and mapped with MIH requirements. So here we see a rendering of the proposed development looking northwest. The proposed new buildings, shown in yellow outline, would replace existing low-rise commercial buildings with 5 new 28-story mixed-use buildings and 1 6-story mixed-use building. The 2 towers fronting on Malcolm X Boulevard would be set back and rise sheer from 6-story bases, while the remaining 3 towers would be set back and rise sheer from a 4-story base. All 5 of the new towers would be approximately 280 feet tall, matching the height of the adjacent Harlem Hospital building, which we can just see on the northern portion of this picture. The first and second floors of all new buildings are proposed to contain retail, commercial space, community facility space, and accessory residential use. These buildings will add 1.5 million square feet of floor area and 1,600 new dwelling units, approximately 400 to 500 of which will be permanently affordable. Together, the proposed new buildings and existing residential buildings will total 3 million square feet, 2.8 million square feet of residential use, 130,000 square feet of commercial use, and 14,000 square feet of community facility use. The development will hold a total of 3,300 dwelling units. Seen here in plan view, we can see the proposed below-grade parking would allow for the creation of 6 acres of landscaped space, shown in green on this map. The applicant is currently in discussions with existing tenants. These discussions are ongoing and no decisions have been reached regarding whether the proposed green space will be public or for tenants only. It is possible that certain areas on the site will be open while others will be for tenant use only. But the applicant will elaborate on this at the public hearing. The sky bridges shown along Malcolm X Boulevard will traverse over a driveway and pedestrian pathway to connect the 2nd story of the 6-story building with the northwest tower and the southwest tower. The clear height between the ground and the sky bridges is 15 feet. FD&Y has had a preliminary review of the site plan and confirmed that the sky bridges will not interfere with FD&Y access or present any safety concerns. Also to note, 5 of the 11 existing curb cuts would remain and 12 new curb cuts are proposed to be introduced. Generally, building construction will be in 2 phases. First, the western side of the development, and then the eastern side, with parking and landscape area phased with the development of buildings. The applicant will speak in more detail on the phasing plan for the development at the public hearing. So the applicant proposes 5 separate actions to facilitate the construction of this development. First, a zoning map change to rezone the project area from R72 with C14 overlay to a C62 district, which is an R8 equivalent. This would allow an increase in FAR from 3.44 to 6.02, but the applicant proposes a development of 5.61 FAR. The applicant proposes this zoning district as it provides more flexibility in the type of commercial uses achievable on the site, but the applicant will elaborate on this rationale of the proposed zoning district in the public hearing. Second, concurrent with the zoning map action, the applicant proposes a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the rezoned area. The action would facilitate the construction of anywhere between 411 to 493 permanently affordable units, depending on which affordable housing option, either 1 or 2, is chosen, and the option has not yet been confirmed. Third, to modify certain bulk regulations within a large-scale development, waivers must be sought for the proposed setback and minimum distance between buildings. Fourth, the applicant seeks a special permit to reduce required parking requirements on the site. The applicant proposes to construct 138 additional spaces So the site will have a total of 525 spaces. Finally, the applicant seeks an authorization to modify curb cut requirements to allow the creation of additional and wider curb cuts than would otherwise be allowed. And all proposed actions will facilitate the proposed development. As we can see here, a rendering of the site. We're standing on Malcolm X Boulevard, so we can see one of the two sky bridges proposed, the 6-story building, and this is the northwest building base and tower. Here we see the proposed retail on the site, an interior view of the site showing the landscaped area, and another interior view of the landscaped area. An EIS was conducted with DCP acting on behalf of the CPC as lead agency. The notice of completion for the DEIS was issued on August 23rd, 2019. The DEIS identifies significant adverse impacts. Multiple mitigation measures are being further studied. The public hearing for the DEIS is scheduled at the same time as the public hearing for the land use application, which is Wednesday, December 18th. Okay. This application was referred to the Community Board on August 26th of this year. The Community Board held 2 hearings on September 19th and October 17th. The Community Board has voted to disapprove with conditions by a vote of 20 to 15 with 1 abstention. I will note upon personal observation of these hearings, some of those individuals that did not support the motion to disapprove with conditions wish to simply vote no on the application. The full resolution, which details all conditions, is included in the Commission's briefing package. Among the conditions I would like to highlight for the Commission, the following: that the community rejects the proposed C6 zoning as it is not consistent with the present and future needs of the community. That the community wishes to preserve the C14 commercial zoning. That there be a height cap of no more than 195 feet for newly proposed towers with appropriate setbacks. And that an affordable housing option is pursued, which includes 50% market rate housing, 30% moderate income housing, and 20% low income housing. The Borough President held a public hearing on November 18th. They have supplied the Commission with a recommendation of disapproval, and I have copies of the letter with me as we just received it this afternoon. Are there any questions?
Were there any recommendations? Were there any recommendations in the Borough President's letter?
She cites many conditions or recommendations in her letter. It's 11 pages. I brought copies to distribute. We just received it this afternoon, so I have not yet been able to do a full review of it.
What would be helpful is perhaps by the time of the Commission to have a slide like this one that summarizes the Borough President's recommendations as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Questions from the Commission? Commissioner Ortiz.
Perhaps this is a minor point, but you mentioned the new curb cuts. And, you know, one of the findings on that is just that they don't affect the character of the neighborhood. And as you look at, you know, those streets, you know, the lack of curb cuts actually speaks to the character of the neighborhood more so than the cuts themselves. And, you know, we know that curb cuts just really undermine, I should say, the pedestrian environment significantly, and it's such a walkable area. So I'd like the applicant to speak to that, because I'm uncomfortable with the number of curb cuts, and I'd like to understand why.
Okay, the applicants can speak to that at the public hearing.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Levin.
Allison, I just wanted to compliment you on flagging at least most of the questions I could remember that we had the review session and indicating that the applicant would be prepared to discuss them. So good job. Thank you.
Commissioner De La Luz.
And I'm assuming that the applicant will be prepared to speak to the findings in the DEIS and the mitigations that they're proposing.
Yes, they can speak to that on Wednesday.
How many people are we expecting?
Prepare yourself for a very long day. The one other thing that I would note, while not reflected in the community board resolution, is I want to echo the concern that was expressed by Commissioner Burney at the time of certification about a sky bridge. While it is all within an existing super block, it certainly does block the visual welcoming nature, particularly as the inner area is proposed to change from parking to a green space. Whether or not public, it blocks a visual access to it.
And it's not unconnected to the issue of what's public and what's private. It looks from the renderings as though it would be very difficult actually to privatize it. It seems they're very open. So that's a related question, I guess.
Okay, then we will see this at a lengthy public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay, the sixth item on the agenda, page 246, is a pre-hearing review of a special permit in Manhattan Community District 2, and our presenter is Sylvia Lee.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application for a large retail special permit in Soho, returning for a public hearing on Wednesday. The applicant, owner of the commercial condo occupied by the retail store Zara, seeks to legalize the approximately 28,000 square foot retail establishment encompassing the highlighted portions of an existing 5-story commercial building plus cellar located at 503 Broadway in an M15B zoning district in Soho, Manhattan Community District 2. The Commission may recall that the applicant acquired the highlighted property as a commercial condo in 2014. Prior to Zara, the space was most recently occupied on the ground floor by tenant Old Navy under a 10-year lease. The rest of the building is also commercially occupied, but subject to separate ownership and not part of this application. Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends disapproval of the application. Manhattan Borough President recommends disapproval with conditions. I'll go over the recommendations in more detail after a brief overview of the project. As shown on the area map, the project site is a through lot with frontages on Broadway and Mercer Street between Broome and Spring Streets. The site is located within an N15B zoning district, which permits light manufacturing commercial uses as of right up to 5 FAR. As in standard M1 districts, use group 6 and 10A, retail establishments of 10,000 square feet or more is only permitted by the Commission's special permit with certain specified exceptions. I'll note here that this restriction was put in place in 1974 in all M1 districts. And with the primary intention of directing department stores and larger retail establishments to establish commercial centers at the time in C districts. The surrounding Soho neighborhood is highly mixed use, with Broadway as a major commercial corridor. Buildings within the vicinity, especially the ones along Broadway, are typically loft buildings ranging from 3 to 12 stories and house retail establishments on the lower floors and mix of uses on the upper floors. Through lot buildings typically have retail entrances along Broadway and service entrances on Mercer and Crosby Streets. The development site is easily accessible by public transportation, served by nearby stations, many trains, and as well as bus services. Very briefly, as shown on the elevation of the Broadway frontage of the building, the single large retail establishment subject to the special permit encompasses about 14,000 zoning square feet each on the northern portion of the ground floor and the second floor, an additional 15,000 gross square feet in the northern portion of the cellar. In total, the establishment occupies about 28,000 square feet in zoning floor area. As shown on the ground floor plan, the large retail establishment has its retail entrance on Broadway. Deliveries are received at Mercer Street entrance, where the freight elevators are located. According to the applicant's material, deliveries are received during nighttime hours, at least 4 nights a week. Manhattan Community Board 2 adopted a resolution recommending disapproval of the application, citing traffic, loading, delivery, land use, and quality of life concerns. Manhattan Borough President issued a recommendation to disapprove of the application unless the conditions listed on the slide are met, 2 of which are related to the applicant's proposal, 1 related to Department of Buildings' effort in the area. CB2s and Manhattan Borough President's specific quality of life recommendations are summarized on this slide on the left-hand side. Applicant provided some responses during Community Board 2's review and Borough President's review, and has submitted a letter detailing those proposed changes to the commission, which is included in your briefing package. I've summarized key responses on the right-hand side of the slide. Specifically, in response to concerns over trash management and schedule, the applicant has contracted a new pickup company with agreement to retain garbage within the building until pickup time instead of on the sidewalk, which will be in the morning hours instead of nighttime. In response to noise and disturbance associated with nighttime deliveries, the applicant has implemented quiet delivery practices with under a new contract with the logistics company to minimize noise. The applicant intends to provide additional information on these operational changes at the hearing. In response to complaints about nighttime light pollution and illuminated signage, the applicant clarifies that there are shades over the windows on the second floor. Lights are turned off every night when the store is closed between 10 to 10:30 p.m., and the lights providing illumination to the Zara sign over the front entrance have been turned off to comply with LPC approval. In the letter, the applicant also states that a community liaison has been designated whose contact information has been provided to the community. The applicant's letter also includes additional details related to the above changes, as well as clarification on other issues. Additionally, staff have also asked the applicant to be prepared to address issues regarding delivery schedule, potential changes to delivery schedule, adequacy of storage and its relationship with delivery frequency, as well as the feasibility of installing off-street loading berths in the building. With regards to the last point, staff here also reached out to the LPC, and I can share their LPC's initial reaction to installing loading berths to the commission if you have questions. The recommendations from CB2 and the Borough President also raise questions about whether the certificate of occupancy listing large retail establishment on the ground floor and cellar was initially erroneously issued. Applicant will provide a more detailed history about the building at the hearing. Staff spoke with DOB and was informed that there's a lack of evidence indicating that the CFO was issued in error, and it's possible that the use was associated with sales room that historically was located in the building, in the subject space. As a reminder, I'll note that regardless, the special permit in front of you now does encompass the entirety of the Zara store, which includes the ground floor and cellar space. With regards to recommendations related to DOB's practices in the surrounding area, we're aware that the Department of Buildings in the past couple of years has updated their large retail permitting policy in Soho, improved enforcement efforts, and issued violations on several large retail establishments, including Zara store. The department has been and will continue to work with DOB to ensure that the correct interpretation and implementation of the zoning regulations here. So this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission. Commissioner Levin.
I have two, thank you. Will someone from Zara itself be present on Wednesday to talk about operational stuff?
Yes.
That would be very important to us, I think.
Yes.
And then, I want to take you up on your invitation to tell us about what you learned from LPC with respect to loading berths.
So obviously LPC will, they noted that it is, this isn't, this would be a significant change. and would not be at staff level review and was subject to hearings and commission approval. Their kind of initial assessment is that I think I have an image of the. So this is the Mercer Street frontage of the building, which is an image I shared with the LPC staff. Says the staff said that it appears that some of the historic cast iron columns and other historic fabric would have to be relocated or eliminated at the base of the building, which is not desirable for especially a namesake historic district building. Given the strong presence of the columns in the building and the streetscape and lack of curb cut, I think this will be a significant change from LPC's perspective.
Other comments? Okay, we'll see this at the public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
The seventh item on the agenda, page 279, is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map amendment in Brooklyn Community District 14. Our presenter is Lilia Carrier.
Okay, good afternoon. This is an application by Pulmonary and Sleep Medical for a zoning map amendment for a change from an R2 to an R32 district to facilitate the continued use of an existing medical office use at 2513 and 2523 Avenue O in Midwood, Community District 14, Brooklyn. The proposed project area was included into the 2006 Midwood rezoning, which changed the district in the project area from an R6 to an R2. The project area is located at 2513 to 2523 Avenue O in Midwood, Community District 14, Brooklyn. The project area is located on a portion of a tax block generally bound by East 26th Street to the east, Bedford Ave to the west, Avenue O to the south, and Avenue N to the north. The surrounding area is predominantly residential. To the north and south are R2 and R32 districts, which are characterized by low-scale 1- and 2-family detached and semi-detached homes. Kings Highway, a 140-foot wide corridor, is zoned R7A and characterized by mid-density, mixed-use residential and commercial buildings. The project area consists of Block 7679, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the corner of Avenue O and East 26th Street. The project area is approximately 10,000 square feet with 100-foot frontage on Avenue O and 100-foot frontage on East 26th Street. Lots 1 and 2 are applicant-owned. They're 2-story semi-detached residential buildings, both with medical office, community facility use on the ground floor and residential above. Lot 3 is also applicant-owned and a 2-story semi-detached residential building, and Lot 4 is a 2-story semi-detached residential building. The project area, the project site is located on lots 1 and 2. Lot 1 is at the corner of Avenue O and East 26th Street has an area of 2,500 square feet. Lot 2 is immediately adjacent to Lot 1 and has an area of 2,450 square feet. The applicant purchased Lot 1 and 2 in 2013 and 2006 respectively for medical office and residential use. The applicant maintains that the medical office use existed on the ground floor prior to the purchase of the properties and the 2006 rezoning, which the use was allowed as of right under the previous R6. There is no certificate of occupancy available on either lot. The existing medical office use will continue to occupy the ground floor and residential units will continue to be on the second floor. No expansion is planned for the proposed development. The applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment to change the existing R2 zoning district to an R32 zoning district. The existing R2 district is a non-contextual district that permits single-family detached buildings with a residential FAR of 0.5 and a community facility FAR of 1. R2 districts permit use groups 1 and with restrictions 3 and 4. Use group 4, ambulatory diagnostic or treatment healthcare facilities, are prohibited in R2 districts.
The proposed R32 district is a non-contextual district that allows semi-detached and detached single and two-family homes and small multifamily apartment buildings. With a residential FAR of 0.5 and a community facility FAR of 1, R32 districts permits use groups 1, 2, 3, and 4, allowing ambulatory diagnostic healthcare facilities to locate in the district as of right. So on November 3rd, the committee board voted to disapprove the application with 8 in favor, 19 opposed, and 7 abstaining. The full board voted against the Land Use Committee's resolution to approve the application. And then the borough president hearing was held on November 13, who voted to disapprove with modifications and recommended that the commission or city council disapprove unless the proposed R32 was modified to R31. So R31 and R32 have the same bulk regulations, and there are 2 main differences. So R31 only permits detached and semi-detached single and two-family houses. So in the photo here, it's a typical detached single-family home that would be located in an R31 district. Whereas in R32 districts, you can get multifamily buildings and attached single and two-family homes. So this is a nearby attached single-family homes close to the project area. The other main difference is that ambulatory diagnostic treatment healthcare facility uses are limited to a maximum of 1,500 square feet in R31, where it is allowed as of right in R32. The department considers R32 to be an appropriate district for this location. And as you can see in the map, R32 is mapped in the surrounding low-density residential areas, southeast of Kings Highway and 2 blocks west of the project area. The project area is also directly across from the New York Community Hospital on Kings Highway, which is a major commercial thoroughfare mapped R7A with a wide range of building heights and a mix of uses. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just a clarification, Lilia. I believe that when we looked, there was not an R31 anywhere in the surrounding area, that this would be a standalone island?
Yes. So if you look on the left-hand map, the blue is R31. So there's nothing immediately in the surrounding area.
And then the orange is the sea of current R32?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Dweck.
Thank you. I certainly understand the zoning rationale with the R32 versus the R31. But just to clarify, the R31 would legalize the current situation.
Yes, it would. And it would limit the square footage.
But it would be conforming?
Yes.
Okay, so if we just hear from the applicant on Wednesday as to why R32, but I do understand the department's take on the zoning rationale. I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, then this will be at the public hearing on Wednesday.
Okay, the 8th item on our agenda, page 299, is a non-ULURP post-referral of a minor modification of a previously approved special permit in Queens Community District 2, and Alexis Wheeler is here to present.
Madam Chair, I'd like to be recused. Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So I'm coming back to you with a project that you're very, very familiar with now, 6902 Queens Boulevard, the minor modifications.
Did we lose our Jeff? There we go.
And just to familiarize yourself again with the location, this is on Queens Boulevard in the Woodside neighborhood of Community District 2 in Queens. It's actually very far east in there, almost hitting the Elmhurst boundary, and it's bounded by 69th Street and 70th Street, as well as the LIRR embankment. And just recently, in maybe record time, we held a vote, the community board too held a vote at a public hearing, and they voted by 25 votes to approve and 3 to oppose. There had been a letter from Council Member Holden regarding kind of contesting the minor modifications here. Ultimately, the community board really felt that the increase in affordable units here was something that was worth approving, and so that was a key reason why they chose to approve the minor modifications. So that's all. Are there any questions?
Questions? If not, then I'll ask for an assent by show of hands that we'll send a letter to the departments of buildings, letting them know that this is a minor modification. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Item 9 on our agenda is a city council modification scope determination for the POP signage and amenities text. The proposed modification would restore the open to the public language to the signage requirement. Staff believe that this is in scope.
Any questions? Okay, then assent by show of hands to send the scope determination to the city council. Done.
Okay. Item 10 on our agenda is a city council modification scope determination for the La Hermosa zoning map and zoning text amendments and special permits. The proposed modification would eliminate option 2, leaving option 1 of the MIH options. Staff believe that this change is also in scope.
Questions? Then assent by show of hands to send such a letter to the city council. Thank you.
Okay. For Wednesday, December 18th, staff have prepared reports for the following 105 Duane Street POPs. I believe there was a memo sent out last week, and then also in your package regarding a modification. Allison Brown is here to discuss.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon again. So to refresh everyone's memory, the applicant is seeking special permit to modify several requirements in the POPs located at 105 Duane Street. The proposed modification to allow a 24-inch wide illuminated accessory sign to replace an existing non-complying sign. DCP staff feels is unwarranted, as we do not believe the proposed sign would fulfill the findings. If denied, the applicant may install a compliant accessory sign of no more than 16 inches in width and non-illuminated. Are there any questions?
I'll just note or remind the commission that this is an instance where the changes were made and then the applicant came to us to regularize them. The other changes the department believes are appropriate, but there are two facets of the sign that cause us pause. One is the size of it, and even more so, the fact that it is illuminated, which is not allowed by our POPs regulations. And so the report as drafted and shared with the commission grants the requested changes with the exception of this one. So they would have to remove this sign and come back with a conforming sign. Or not come back, remove this and put in place a conforming sign. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Other project or other reports prepared for December 18th. The Summers Brothers Tinware Factory, the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Company Central Power Station Engine House, the Montauk Paint Manufacturing Company building, the Gowanus Canal Flushing Tunnel Pumping Station and Gatehouse, and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Brooklyn Office and Shelter and Garage. All are landmarks in the Gowanus neighborhood in Brooklyn Community District 6. Also scheduled for a decision on Wednesday, Eugene Street and Amboy Road in Staten Island Community District 3, 866 Rathbun Avenue, 365 Chelsea Street, and 636 Darlington Avenue in Staten Island Community District 3. My recollection is that 70 Cedar Terrace and 74 Cedar Terrace we are still having some discussions, and those will likely be laid over on Wednesday. 2636 Scribner Avenue is also scheduled for a decision. For post-hearing follow-up, 22-60 46th Street rezoning. Blake, I believe you're here for a follow-up.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm here to follow up on the public hearing that was held on December 4th for the 2260 46th Street rezoning. I'll share a brief overview of the Queensborough President's recommendation, as well as provide more information about the surrounding neighborhood context and local trends in household sizes and housing units themselves in response to comments and questions at the public hearing. The Queensborough President made a recommendation submitted a recommendation on December 2nd to approve the application with the conditions that the applicant make every effort to address the community board's concerns about the height of the proposed buildings and that the applicant strongly consider a lower income MIH option. And to provide a more nuanced description of the neighborhood context, many speakers spoke to the residential and low-density character of the surrounding area. This is certainly true for the R4 zoning district to the east of the project area, but I do want to underscore that the project area itself is at the center of a commercial and light industrial cluster and many of those uses are similar in that area, and that the blocks west of the project area in the R5 zoning district that's established have a mix of multifamily walk-up buildings as well as 1- and 2-family buildings. And just to show examples of this context, as we've discussed before, there is a 6-story, 70-foot tall condo building at the northern end of the project area. This building was built in 1901 before the surrounding neighborhood was built as the Steinway Piano Factory. It was converted in 2008 to a residential use. Along Ditmars Boulevard, again, north and west of the project area, you'll see a number of 2- and 3-story buildings. Many have ground floor retail uses, and there are also several multifamily walk-up buildings. To the west of the project area, there is a commercial shopping center, and to the east, there is a self-storage facility that was built earlier this year. There are also several questions about the size of households and trends in household size. We've pulled data on this, and overall we see that household sizes in the surrounding area or the immediate 600-foot area and Community District 1 are generally lower than what we see in Queens and New York City and have changed at roughly the same rate as the city as a whole, a slight increase in the household size between 2010 and 2017. And then we also see that there is a lower proportion of households with children in the surrounding area and Community District 1 compared to Queens and New York City. We're also seeing a sharper decrease in households with children in this local context than we have seen across the city. Looking at housing units, this neighborhood generally has smaller housing units than what we see in Queens and across the city, with a higher preference for studios and 1-bedrooms. And we've seen an increase in studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms, and a decrease in 3-bedrooms, 4-bedrooms, and 5 or more bedrooms between 2010 and 2017. These trends are generally what we see in areas that are near the Manhattan CBD and that have strong transit access to the Manhattan CBD. Returning to household incomes, just to provide a bit more information, as we've discussed, the community board or the community district and the surrounding neighborhood generally have higher incomes than New York City as a whole. And when we break this down into by the number of people in each household, we see that these households are at about 60 to 80% of area median income and could be considered low income to moderate income. And as a reminder, the applicant is pursuing the workforce option at 115% of area median income. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Questions? Thank you, Blake. Oh, thank you. Commissioner Levin.
Not so much a question, but I think a comment. I'd be pleased to see this, the affordability limits here more targeted to what this indicates to be the area need, which would push it closer to, certainly away from the workforce option and closer to option 1.
Other comments? Commissioner De La Hoz.
Certainly, first off, I appreciate you doing this. I would love for us to do this on a more consistent basis when we consider these things. That way it's really helpful for all of us to see, rather than pulling the information up on NYU Fairman Center website, which is what I tend to do. Unfortunately, I missed this hearing, but I know that there was a theater component to this project. I guess I'm wondering how much of the discussion centered around some desire in the community to have that theater versus the pressure on the affordability. And I'm wondering, obviously I would pick affordable housing, much less deeply and permanently affordable housing over a theater any day, but I'm wondering if the developer is trying to meet multiple community concerns or demands.
I'll note that at the public hearing, Commissioner Levin made the comment that the purpose of housing, of affordable housing in particular, is not to cross-subsidize a theater.
There really wasn't anyone from the neighborhood speaking in favor of the theater.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Other post-hearing items, 18-17 130th Street, Special College Point District Special Permit. I believe there's any further follow-up on that. 147-40 15th Avenue Commercial Overlay. And then the 2835 and 2845 Veterans Road West, I believe that Susan Amron wanted to speak about that.
Yes, thank you. So just a very quick follow-up on the application for 2835-45 Veterans Roads West, which was on for public hearing 2 weeks ago. At the hearing, an attorney representing the neighbor to the applicant questioned the commission's jurisdiction to hear the application before it. And so I just wanted to briefly address that question. The applicant and the neighboring landowner are in litigation concerning whether an earlier zoning lot subdivision was improper or proper. And that earlier subdivision involved tax lot that was owned by the neighboring landowner, who's the plaintiff here, and then a tax lot owned by the applicant here. The applicant's tax lot is now part of the larger zoning lot that's involved in the current application. And the neighboring landowner is asserting now that the zoning lot subdivision was improper, and therefore the zoning lot that's a subject matter of the current application is improperly formed, and that because of that, the commission doesn't have jurisdiction. Just to be clear, one, city planning and the commission are named in the litigation, but we view this as a dispute between two landowners. That really does not involve us. The city planning, we have no position on the merits of the litigation, but that will happen outside of this process, and it should not in any way affect any decision-making or consideration of the application by the City Planning Commission.
Any questions for Susan? Yes, Commissioner Marin.
Do any of the actions that we're undertaking get affected by the possibility of the subdivision not being legal?
If a court were ultimately to decide that, the court could propose a number of remedies, which may or may not then allow the applicant to proceed with the project, but it wouldn't affect our ability to approve a project.
Thank you.
Every now and then at a public hearing, you get a total curveball surprise, and that was one of them. Okay, thank you.
All right. The Bridge Park South mapping application. Okay, and then we should have someone here for the Go Broom Street development.
No, I received a note that we have not yet received the anticipated document from the developer, and so we will consider this at our January 6th review session.
Okay, I'll remind the developer that the clock expires on January 21st.
Yes.
Okay, I don't have any other items.
Great, I think that is it. Thank you. Is it the sense of the commission that you would want us to organize for the flushing sites?
Yeah,
Okay,
good idea.
that's our sense, and we also thought that we would do it in the morning because lunch and flushing is not to be missed.